to see all of you here. Thank you. Thank you. I'm really grateful to see all of you, dear friends, and spending your time to joining the discourse with us. We know that the words of God, the prayers, they have incalculable value and effect on the human hearts. So we would like to start our program with a few prayers, and let me see. Mrs. Basanti Shinoy and Mr. Uttam Kamble, we are going to have two prayers. I can't see them. Adib, are you able to locate? Both of them are there? Okay. Okay.
We are there.
Okay. I'm just looking for the other friend. I think he is not there. Mr. Uttam, are you there? Okay, I can't see him. All right, so we will start the prayer. May I request Adib to kindly unmute Mrs. Prasanti for her to chant the prayer.
मैं तेरी शरण में जाग उठा हूँ, हे मेरे ईश्वर, हे मेरे ईश्वर, हे मेरे ईश्वर, जो तेरी शरण की कामना करे, उसके लिए ये उचित है कि वो तेरे संरक्षण में निवास करे, मेरे अंतर मन को, हे मेरे नाथ, मेरे अंतर मन को, हे मेरे नाथ, अपने धर्म प्रकाशन के प्रभात प्रकाश द्वारा वैसे ही आलोकित कर दे, जैसे तूने मेरे बाह्य अस्तित्व को अपनी कृपा के प्रभात प्रकाश द्वारा प्रकाशित किया है, प्रकाशित किया है। मैं तेरी शरण में जाग उठा हूँ, हे मेरे ईश्वर, हे मेरे ईश्वर है मेरे ईश्वर है मेरे ईश्वर।
Thank you so much, Mrs. Vasanthi, for your wonderful chant. Thank you so much. Dear friends, I welcome again all of you. I welcome Mr. Badi Shams from Canada, who is our keynote speaker today. Friends, you know, a few days back, in this month actually, we have a lot of national and international days. And a couple of days back, we had the Teachers' Day, and we also had the International Literacy Day. I'm mentioning this because both these days were related to education, and the focus of all our programs is on education. That's the reason that I'm mentioning about these two days. Friends, we must remember that every individual in the society is a teacher in his own individual life and for the wider society. When we talk about education, we don't mean only academic knowledge. We believe that it has to go beyond the academic knowledge, and it has to inculcate values and virtues in the society and in the human beings. Before for always, before we start the program, for those people who are joining for the first time, we take a couple of minutes time to introduce them to these programs, and then we introduce the subject and the keynote speaker. We have been receiving a lot of mails from the friends who are joining and who have not been able to join, both of them, to share with them the recordings of the discourse, and because they have missed the program, so we would like to inform all of them that we have been able to upload all the recordings on the YouTube, and you can visit the channel and you can see the recordings. Please publicize and help us to support and publicize this small endeavor of ours, this initiative. And we are grateful for those who have already subscribed to the channel, and please do so if you haven't done so far. And if you are joining for the first time, please do leave your contacts in the chat box to continue the communications. So before I introduce to you our keynote speaker today, I will take a few minutes, as I mentioned, the purpose of these programs and the subject that we are going to discuss today. These programs, as I mentioned before, are organized by the members of the Baha'i community, which is perhaps the most diverse body of people on this planet. The basic tenets of the Baha'i faith is oneness of God, oneness of religions, and oneness of mankind. Basically, the Baha'i community facilitates the humanity's passage to maturity and passage to its oneness. The Baha'i community is virtually existing in all the countries of the world, and the Baha'i, the followers of Baha'u'llah, they work relentlessly for the unification and betterment of the world. Education, as I was mentioning earlier, it remains at the heart of the activity of the Baha'i communities all over the world. It is a core belief that every individual is a mind rich in gems of inestimable value, and only education will be able to release the potential and the capacity in the human beings. And education will be able to inculcate in them the consciousness, the positive consciousness that they're supposed to have for the betterment of the society. Friends, we strongly believe that as we observe in the society around us, that ignorance has been the main cause of all the social issues that we face, and the unawareness of the purpose of life, the inadequate understanding of the concepts of human existence, they have contributed tremendous amount of prejudice, which has been able to create all these maladies and problems in the society. So therefore, the Baha'i community undertakes thousands of educational initiatives, in the world, and they include both formal and informal programs. There are more than 300 training institutes which inculcate this kind of courses for the human beings. We are conscious of the fact that the lecturing sessions do not help much. They're not much useful. Therefore, we always make an attempt to hear everyone and involve them in the educational process to create vibrant communities around us that starts actually basically from us, our families, and it extends to the wider society. In this process, there is no room for observers, there is no room for the passive listeners. We seek to consult and learn together to create love and unity within everyone, which will contribute to nation building and realize our vision of one world and one family. So this is the basic purpose of our holding these programs, to build bridges, to initiate conversations with people, to talk about the contemporary issues, to share our thoughts and to hear the concerns of the friends who are joining and to discuss the positive ideas and to facilitate, as I mentioned before, humanity's passage to its maturity. The ideas should not be regarded as utopian ideas because the Baha'i community is the example itself who is cultivating these ideas and implementing these ideas into reality in its own communities. We have been holding these discourses since the onset of pandemic, and we are grateful for the friends who are supporting us, and we see that the circle of support has been expanding gradually. Friends, I request all of you to actively participate in the program, to switch on the video, show your hands, and make your comments after when the keynote speaker will complete his address, and kindly help us to publicize these programs and to enlarge the circle of more and more people who will be coming forward to help us and create a unifying vision between the purpose of life and the purpose of the society. So now I will introduce our keynote speaker today, who is going to talk about the subject of elimination of extremes of wealth and poverty, which we call a society without poverty and extravagance. How the moral principles are going to intervene in order to solve this protracted issue. We live in an unequal society, dear friends, and the issue of global poverty is actually much more serious than we can think about, or what we see in the statistics of the governments and the international organizations. Almost half the world, friends, dear friends, they live with the income of less than 400 rupees a day, and a very tiny percentage of people, say less than 1%, they hold the wealth of 43% wealth of the world. Now the question is, when so much resources and so much knowledge and resources and food is available for the population of the world, why is it that so many people are living in poverty and without access to basic living conditions? It is clear that humanity's rulers have been unable to solve this problem, and their materialistic ideals, they have failed miserably. So what is the way out? What are the options available in front of us to come out of this impasse? We suggest that every individual that truly care for the development of the world, to contribute positively to this society, should try to inculcate the moral precepts in his own life, and he should also try to inculcate in others in order to create a better society. The contemporary thinking of transfer of the financial resources, a generation of material wealth hasn't been very helpful. So in this regard, our keynote speaker is going to draw our attention how the moral precepts are going to help us in order to solve these extremes of wealth and poverty. As I mentioned earlier, our keynote speaker is Mr. Badi Shams, who is a thinker who lives in Canada, and he is known as a mystic economist, and he has 2 books to his credit. He has written numerous articles and scores of research papers, all devoted to the study of economics. He has spent a substantial part of his life in education, and he's a wild travel guy, and he has tremendous amount of wisdom in this area of economics, how the global economics is going to be administered through the intervention of moral precepts. I cannot, my words are actually not much helpful to express my gratitude to him because he is joining us at a very odd hour. It's probably 4 o'clock in the morning, and he has been kind enough to accept our invitation to address us. I kindly request Mr. Barry Shams to address the gathering. Thank you very much, friends.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome to this gathering and this very challenging subject, and I always call it boring. But before I go to that, it's so nice to see some old faces like my old friend Ali Merchant that we go way back when we were in our 20s. And so it's nice to see some faces that I know. As I said, this subject is quite serious. The economic as a whole is very serious subject and at the same time very important. So I hope I can do justice to it, but before going to that, I have to make some disclaimers. First of all is please forgive me if you hear me snoring, because this is about 3:30 in the morning here. So if I started snoring, just ignore it, and maybe Mr. Mishra will wake me up. The other part is that is not humility, is that I'm no expert. I've been trying to understand the moral aspect of economics. I don't know if I got it, but I've tried to understand it. So in that spirit, I'll try to share what is in my heart and what is in my mind. And I hope that you like it. But if you don't like it, it's okay, as long as you don't resent me, because the world is full of people who resent each other for no reason. If you don't agree with my ideas or what I'm saying, that's fine. But as long as you don't resent me, then, because that makes more hatred in the world, and we don't need it. So that is another request I have. Normally, I have the habit of going off track and let the spirit guide me. And that sometimes takes me places that no man has gone before. In order not to do that, today I have some notes in front of me, so I check myself before I go places. What I'm trying to do today to share with you is understanding the problems, which I'm happy that Dr. Mishra made my job easier by mentioning the disparities in our world at the moment. And unfortunately, the pandemic made it 10 times worse. We had already the great gap between rich and the poor and the downtrodden, and especially in North America, the immigrants and the people of colors. The pandemic really highlighted their plights, that how this affected them. And of course, the way they were talking about it, it's affected them maybe 5, 10 times more than the average North American or Canadian or American. Anyway, so, but definitely there are serious problems with this world, especially economic. Not economic, it's educational, political, and the whole world is going through a transformation in many ways, and economic is one of them. Anyway, before we start, I guess it's good to know that what economic is, because we talk about this complex subject, and most of us we don't know. And when you read the books, you find a definition of economics 2, 3 pages, and by the time you read it, you realize you're more confused now. So in order to make it simpler, which is my habit, and I had a hard time my second book to write it down, because somehow I don't like to talk technical words. I don't like to talk big words. And I was inspired by son of our prophet Abdullah, who always talked about amazing concept in a very simple language. So I've tried always to do that. So tonight, if you find my presentation too simplistic, please forgive me. But that's how my mind works. I don't have a big brain to understand big concept. So I try to make it in a small way that my brain understand. And that was the problem I had with my book, was how to make economic subject understandable to person who has no knowledge of economics, and so they can understand it. So that's what I will do. Now, definition of economics, or explanation or meaning of it, for me, I find it very simplistic way, is called, economics is a Greek, it's got a Greek root, which is oikonomia, which means management of a household or a family. So economic system is supposed to help you to manage your family or your household. Of course, when we are talking about that, we are talking of the whole world, the human family. And in that regard, I think economics has failed, as Dr. Mishra mentioned. And there are so many problems, and I won't go much into it because it is quite clear. Maybe a few years ago, it was very difficult to mention it. But we know that the gap is becoming more. There is, I think, about 4 billion people maybe below the poverty line. And we have heard all in the newspapers how 1% of the population possessed up to 95% of the resources. That was the last time, I think 2017, I think it was somewhere. And things are not getting better, unfortunately. The prime example for me to show the disparity was when I read somewhere a CEO of a fashion industry, he works for 4 days. His 4 days his wage is equivalent to a lifetime of a Bangladesh mill worker. 4 days he works is equivalent a person who works in the mill, who makes those clothes, has to work all her entire or his entire life. And that's, to me, is a failure of a system that which was supposed to help the poor and make this household happy and prosperous, so everybody is happy. Now, we may, since we don't have time, I will not go much into details. So I'm trying to basically go back. We know the problem that the economic system is not. Trying to understand what is the problem, where did it go wrong, and from my point of view, of course. And then, of course, maybe try to understand how can we try to fix it, or at least try, because it is a very big undertaking. Now, to me, the problem started from the industrial revolution, because, as you know, before that, economic was hardly existing. It was agriculture, and there was a farmer and a landlord or a king, and there was no industry. There was really not much, so there was no need for economic system, and if there was, it was very small. And the only, I guess, industry was the war industry, because these kings and rulers, they had this habit of picking up fight with other people and get the farmers and all, bring to army and all, start taxing them to finance it. But when the industrialization started, everything changed. Because somewhere in England, a person in his factory started making automation that increased the production. Then, of course, as you know, the steam engine was invented, and that led to cars and, engine for the ship and trains and everything. Once the mass production started, then there was need for resources, need for transporting these products and economic activities. And as it was happening, the banking system was not coping, because before there was not really need for it. Now all this transaction has to go through some channel. So most people at that time, they didn't know what to do. because there was no system before. And now, how do you manage all these activities and all changes? Because institutions were changing. Even political, situation was changing. Lots of places from monarchy, they started becoming more of a democracy and elections. So there was basically, a big transformation all over. So Adam Smith, a gentleman from Scotland, he observed the market, and he came up with a system. And then he observed, and he says, the activity everybody is doing, they want to maximum the profit, and self-interest is the motivation, and the market can correct itself, so no government interference is necessary. And at that time, this is very important to have the background in 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution started. With it was a craze, an amazing craze for science. And they thought science is the savior, everything, because suddenly, even we have heard many times, suddenly mankind was free from the physical element. It means, can fly, can go under the water. So suddenly it was amazing freedom. And science was so important that everybody was, basically, if you ask me, not that religion was doing very well at that time, because most religious institutions, they were losing their charm. They were become dogmatic and superstition. So suddenly, this science became almost a religion, and people were so crazy about it. And then, of course, Darwin comes and proves that, survival of the fittest, and trying to say science prove everything. And so everything was that way. So when Adam Smith was making his theories, he just wanted to make it a science. And he called it, basically wealth of nations, which is a science that creates wealth. So it's a science. But unfortunately, to me, it cannot be a science. But in order to make it, there has to be some compromises. For example, there was no room for love, kindness, honesty, truthfulness, all those elements that make us human. How can you quantify truthfulness, honesty? Now, 2 kilos of apple is this much. So if you want to make a scientific out of this economics, you have to discard those elements, so that now you can make a mathematical formula and just say this leads to that. So that's how it started. The sad part about it is this, that Adam Smith was a very moral person. And 7 years before he wrote his book, Wealth of Nation, which is like a Bible to the economists, and everybody followed it, and still some people are influenced by it. He had written a book called The Moral Sentiment, which he mentioned that there is an inherent danger in wealth that can corrupt society. So he had given a warning, though he was giving his book, The Wealth of Nation, how to create wealth, but also gave the warning. Same with Darwin, who was advocating the survival of the fittest, that, the big fish eats the small fish, which is still going on in our economics, the competition, and you have to, remove the competition. And so, but he also had mentioned, he had observed that the tribes that they cooperate, they're thriving better. So he again gave the warning that yes, survival of the fittest, but please remember that cooperation is important. But unfortunately, humanity always picks and the way they think they like. And this is where we are. A system based certain assumption that Man wants to always maximize his profit, and no government should interfere. This is the pure capitalism, of course. And that, to me, I could be wrong, became a breeding ground for greed, because you take the morality and humanity out of the system and say, now you're successful if you create wealth. And we have it to this day. If you have $2 million, you have made it, because we measure our success, our achievements, with the yardstick of money. If you have so many $1,000,000, you have made it. And if you haven't made it, you're a failure. Why? Because the measurement was wrong. The yardstick was wrong. And this is where has led us gradually to where we are, that in 2008, based on those same greed, we almost collapsed our system. Because bunch of greedy people, they sold these mortgages to people without down payment or anything, and everybody was buying it. But in the fine print, it was mentioned, in 6 months, the rate of interest will go to 12%. And people didn't know they were signing. They sold all those mortgages in the hedge funds and in mutual funds. And after 6 months, poor people couldn't pay the mortgage. All those assets became toxic. And lots of companies and pension plans from Iceland to everywhere, they had bought those mutual funds. That's how. So for a while, the economic system was basically collapsing. To me, for a few hours, we didn't even have a system till America pumped this money into the system to revive it. The sad part is this, that after this experience, bitter experience, I thought we have learned a lesson that greed is dangerous and we should be careful. But as you have observed, we are back to business as usual. And where it's going, only God knows. Now, this is the nature of how it started. Basically, to me, religion, which was not doing very well at that time and hasn't been doing very well because it has become a superstition. And this is where, as a religious person, I agree with Karl Marx when he says that religion is the opium of the masses. I fully agree with him, because the religion that people are practicing and they're advocating it is nothing but nonsense and an opium to keep people content and say, oh, this and that, and you're a miserable life, but that's okay because whatever. But it doesn't have to be. So this was no wonder that the economic system and money became religion. And to this day, if you ask me, I say still it is. And we continue doing the same thing. So that's, to me, is the root cause, because we took the humanity, the morality, the spirituality, which is guide our conscience and our actions, like a policeman, was removed. Now everybody for himself, and everybody can make as much as they want, and it doesn't matter how you become a billionaire. It doesn't matter. But you have made it. You're number one, you're billionaire, this and that. Nobody asks, are you a good human being? Have you done anything good? No. He is successful. And me, with $100 in my account, I feel like my life hasn't been a failure, because we have been preached this way, that you have been created to make money and die, which is absolutely wrong with any religious or common sense philosophy. There must be more to life than this. And this is where we are suffering, because our humanity has been ignored. And money, which is a God-given tool for service, has become our goal of our creation. We are just getting it absolutely wrong. Instead of saying, God or Creator, give me money so that I can use it for my family and the mankind, we have been told, have it, put in your account, and it doesn't matter if your neighbor is dying of starvation. That is seriously something wrong. Now, it's easy to criticize what is wrong with the economic system. Everybody can do it. But the question remains, how can we remedy this? And with my little brain power, my idea is this. In a small way, and we don't have to belong to a particular religion, there are certain virtues that belong to everybody, like truthfulness, kindness, generosity, honesty. Now, we can start injecting these values gradually, slowly to the system so that it revives itself, become a system that is sensitive to the needs of humanity, is sensitive to the poor people of the world, is sensitive to the spiritual aspiration that the human being has. Because unfortunately, because of our economic condition, we sacrifice our spiritual activities because we are too busy to struggle for a next meal. And that's the tragedy to me. A crown of creation as a humanity, we have been told that we have created in the image of God. Now, most of the time, we are in a garbage dustbin looking for a meal, whether in North America or somewhere. We have been reduced to less than animals. That is the tragedy that the economic system has done, depriving almost 4 billion or whatever millions of people, depriving them of the spiritual progress, of the spiritual achievement, something that we have been created to strive for. That is what really, really bothers me. And also, I really believe that our inactions, as I mentioned in my book, last book, I said our inactions is partly responsible for the misery of the poor. Because if we sooner or later, we don't change the system, every day there are millions of people suffering. They are deprived of the goal that God has created them because they are too busy to find a few rupees or dollars to survive. What I'm in a gist I can say is what we need is a humanomics. I like this term. What we need a humanomics that has human elements in it, because we are human and we have those abilities and those values. Now, you may say how we can do this. As I said, first of all, we feel like we are totally powerless. This economic system has been going on and the rich people and this and that, and what can I do? What is my role? Is it useless? Why should even try? I don't agree, because in a small way, we all can do. My suggestion is this. Find a way individually, and this is my humble request to all the people, whether you're a Muslim, whether you're Christian, whether you're Buddhist, you're either Hindu, Jews, doesn't matter. Please try by action to reflect what you believe. The tragedy for me is this. I've seen so many wonderful Baha'is, Muslim, Christians, they pray, they go to church, they go to mosque, and the moment they leave their home and go to their business, there is no trace of a spirituality or morality or religion in their actions. They play the same rules that the market plays. This is where the vicious circle, we can break it individually by refusing to do what other people do, by introducing truthfulness, kindness, generosity, all those values. God knows there are 52 and you can come up with more of that, by injecting that to the system, whether it is political, whether it is educational, because all the systems are suffering. It's not just economics. Now, in my book, I devoted a chapter called Practical Economic Suggestion for Everyday Use. There are about 64 suggestions. So, because some people may say, well, I like to introduce these values, but where do I start? Well, I've devoted a chapter and there is a list of it. I've sent it to Dr. Mishra. That can be a starting point and say, okay, out of 62, I can try this one, half of it, but at least it's better than nothing. Because if we don't start changing the system within, because we cannot wait revolution, whether Baha'i economics or Christian economics or whatever, we don't have it. And even if we have a spiritual moral economics, it has to have a foundation. What is the foundation? All those values. You have that as a groundwork, as a foundation, solid foundation, we can build a beautiful building. But if you don't have that foundation, doesn't matter it is communism or capitalism or any ism, it's going to fail. Because the greed will show its ugly face and ruin everything. As we know, that man has got two sides, the spiritual and the animal. And that's another sad part, that we forgot our society, that we need two different civilizations go hand in hand, the spiritual civilization and material civilization. It has been explained that they are like two wings of a bird. How can humanity fly with just making all these scientific inventions and a standard of living, the fastest car and this and that, where we are spiritually absolutely bankrupt, morally bankrupt? We deceive, we lie, and we think we are very clever. I did this and I made this amazing deal and I made $1 million. And we say, oh, look at him. How, how clever he is. With $100, he has made 100 million. But we don't see how he has achieved it. Anyway, so this practical suggestion, I can tell you a few of them. One of them is that ask the certain questions from yourself. The basic question is that, who am I? What is the purpose of my life? I've added another question. How much is enough? How much is enough? Because people become billionaire, they're not satisfied. They're millionaires, they're not satisfied. They have $1,000, not satisfied. Where do we start this vicious circle going around and around? And we know by the time we die, we cannot take it with us anyway. This precious life goes waste after something that we cannot take it with us. All we can take is the good actions, morality, whatever kindness we do. So this question, if we answer, it will lead us to one of the virtues, which is contentment. How much is enough? I have this much thousand, enough for my education of my children and my family. I have the house. Good enough. Now I can devote my time to service humanity. It's very important, basic question, but it can change the direction of our life. The other one is honesty, telling the truth. I mean, how difficult it is. You're selling a car, you're selling a house, you're selling a product, and say, listen, and I've done it. I was selling my car. I said, listen, this is the good, this is the thing, but also it's got a hole underneath. And the gentleman who was buying it says, why are you putting your car down? I said, no, I'm just telling you so you get the full picture. It doesn't cost you anything. By the way, I got a good deal. It was a good sell, so I didn't really suffer. So more of the story is not every time you feel stupid and say, I was honest, but I lost so much money, because that's the complaint most people say. Yeah, if you are honest, you will never make it. Okay, you didn't make it financially, but you made it spiritually. You made it as a human being. That is value something in my book. I'm hoping one day we create a yardstick which is half money and half morality. So when we are measuring, we say, okay, he's got a maybe $1,000, but also he's got about 1,000 units of kindness and generosity and humanity and spirituality. This then becomes a good yardstick. But at the moment, it's so lopsided and it's so tragic. And unfortunately, millions of people feel the failures. especially in poor countries. Oh, I wish I was in America. I had the fast car and this and that. And, every time the American dream has become everybody. Well, I've seen the Americans and North Americans that they achieve their dream. They're suicidal and full of attention and they need counseling. Not necessarily we know that money doesn't bring you salvation or happiness. We again go back to morality. Anyway, I talk too much. Simple living. Simple living, first of all, it makes financial sense. Also, it relieves you of so many headaches. If you have 2-3 houses or 3-4 cars, you have more headache. And all you need the car is to take you from A to B anyway. By the way, you don't even need a car. There's a good transportation bus system. Why do we need the latest car? I don't understand. But that's a different story. That's become advertisement that has become part of our life. And materialism, consumer is another cousin of money. You feel like, especially in North America, they have to change their sofas or decoration every 6 months. Why? I don't know. They're all functional. They look nice. The car is 1 year old. They need the latest fashion. I don't get it. Because advertisement have told them that you're not successful, you're not doing it right if you don't have the latest model. And how sad that is. Anyway, the other part is that I think some of us, we understand is service, doing a service as if you are worshiping. There is so much satisfaction when you do a good job that you cannot put a price tag on it. Everybody's looking for self-esteem or peace of mind. You cannot go to a market and give $1 million, say, can I have some peace of mind, please? You can't buy it with money, but you can get it by your values. And that is something that simplicity can do. The other part is that it applies. I thought it was applied in North America, but I was in India last year for 3 months. I have a project going on in Jaipur, and I realized in India is the same. Just sad that people are buying and nobody tried to justify their buying. If I go to market and I want to buy a soft drink, it has become so subconscious, a second nature. Wait a minute. $1 is about 58, 59 rupees. You know what that dollars will do? When we justify that, then we won't buy the latest car because we have something to compare. And that's unfortunately doesn't happen. So, and the other part, I guess I finish with this, would be respect for environment, of course, is very important because people ignoring and natural resources of the world being sacrificed for greed of the people. And they're ruining jungles and minerals and everything, the environment, you know better than I do, for the sake of profit. That's another reason we need to change the system within by introducing morality, spirituality, virtues. It is very essential, my friends. Maybe I get passionate, but maybe I've been studying it too long and I've become too attached to it. But even from common sense point of view, we are in this earth few days. If we can, by action, show to people and change one person's behavior from consumerism and change their mind, that is an achievement. And if we all do it, if everybody start doing it, simply being honest, we will revolutionize the whole economic system without even planning to revolutionize it. If we just change. And imagine the peace of mind. You go and buy a car, you know the guy is not going to cheat you. He says it is 2,000 rupees. You know, he's honest. You don't have to second guess them. You don't have to waste your time. You trust. Everything will be so peaceful. I mean, it works everybody. Anyway, so that would be, as I said, there are about 64 suggestions with detailed explanation. But I go back to summarize it. economic system, the world as a whole is changing, is transforming from a different system to a new, we call it world commonwealth. And it will not happen by the goodness of people's heart. We have reached a point environmentally and economic wise that the only way humanity understands it is they realize their survival depends on it. And we are reaching that point. Environmentally, we know that before there were issues, but every year there was a flood in Bangladesh. Every year. I remember when I was even in India. And people didn't care. Oh, that has nothing to do with global warming. The moment flood happened in Germany and it happened in New York, oh my God, this global warming is happening. So it's reached a point now everybody understands that our survival depends on it. And same is with economics. This pandemic showed everything. Forget about job security. Forget about businesses crash down. You cannot. And things get worse because, as I said, the old order is crumbling. Educational, political, economic, everything. And as long as this old building does not crumble down and we bring the bulldozer and get all the junk out of the way and build this beautiful blueprint that we have in our hand, we know exactly where the rooms will be. We know where the trees will be. We know every detail about this beautiful future of mankind. We are ready to build, but we need this old structure. So it has to come. And even if you want to make it not to fall down, it's going to happen, as we can see that every day. I always give a bad example that I hope you forgive me. I said, till humanity doesn't become like a donkey stuck in the mud, we will not realize that we need help. And this is where we are. I think humanity is becoming stuck in the mud. Anyway, I talk too much. Basically, I'm saying what we can do is introduce virtues, which is so common. You don't have to be Christian, Muslim. Be honest, be kind, and practice it yourself. If you believe, and that was the message we got from House of Justice that for us Baha'is in March 2017, basically they said, time has come that your action shows. Enough of talking. You show it at your work, at your recreation. This is who you are. I remember the radio CBC in Canada, they interviewed me and they said that you say you're a mystic economist. How do you compromise these two? I said, easy. My spirituality, morality guides my economic decisions. There's no contradiction because that's my conscience. My values, my religion tells me what is right and wrong. You took that away from me, I'll be another consumer buying for nothing. Anyway, thank you for being patient and listening to this difficult subject. I call it boring subject, economics. And of course, listening to my out of this planet ideas and sharing. But please remember, I did in the spirit of sharing. I'm not an expert. And most of the time, I don't even know what I'm talking about. But I'm talking anyway. I hope that it sits with you, whether you are religious or not, realizing the time is too short. And as a human being, we have a duty to perform towards our brothers and sisters in the world. Because this is, if we call ourselves human, that is the quality of a human. Otherwise, we better change our name and say, sorry, I'm not human, I'm animal. Okay, then that's okay. You're fine. Thank you very much.
So money is a tool. It's not a destination. We have to inculcate the virtues into the system.
It's not a goal because most people think I've been created to become rich and famous.
Success should not be measured in terms of accumulation of wealth. Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Vadishams, for conveying us so succinctly the ideas that you believe in and the ideas that can change the world and eliminate the extremes of wealth and poverty. So we have understood that application of the spiritual principles are essential in order to alleviate the ills of the society. But how can these spiritual principles, the ethics, will emanate naturally and spontaneously from within? We need to make an effort. We have to make it a habit to immerse ourselves in the words of God every day, morning and evening. And these words of God have been given to us through the different prophets or the messengers of God that appear to us from time to time. So this moral capacity building that we call, which is so vital for the individual life and to apply it naturally in our daily lives and in the life of the society. Now, we make it a point, in order to get inspiration from the words of God, we make it a point to read some of the relevant text, holy text from different religions. So I will now request Mrs. Nadia Mogwelpur to kindly read the holy text from various religions which are relevant to the subject. Adi, please put it on the screen, please.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Motivational Goals from Bhagavad-Gita. All living beings are divine souls. God is seated in every one, and hence all are equally respect-worthy. The ignorant work for their own profit. The wise work for the welfare of the world, without thought for themselves. Charity given out of duty, without expectation of return, at the proper time and place, and to a worthy person, is considered to be in the mode of goodness. From the Holy Quran, help one another in acts of pity and righteousness. The upper hand is better than the lower hand. The upper hand is that of the giver, and the lower hand is that of the beggar. If you do deeds of charity openly, it is well. But if you bestow it upon the needy in secretly, it will be even better for you. A man's true wealth is the good he does in this world. From Holy Bible, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices, God is pleased. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. From the writings of Gautam Buddha, a generous heart, kind speech, and a life of service and compassion are the things which renew humanity. Set your heart on doing good. Do it over and over again, and you will be filled with joy. If you light a lamp for somebody, it will also brighten your path. If you find no one to support you on the spiritual path, walk alone. There is no companionship with the immature. In the end, these things matter most. How well did you love? How fully did you live? How deeply did you let go? One moment can change a day. One day can change a life. And one life can change the world. The Universal House of Justice, supreme body of the Baha'is of the world, says, world order can be founded only on an unshakable consciousness of the oneness of mankind, a spiritual truth which all the human sciences confirm Recognition of this truth requires abandonment of prejudice of every kind: race, class, color, creed, nation, sex, degree of material civilization, everything which enables people to consider themselves superior to others. No serious attempt to set human affairs aright can ignore religion. No serious attempt to set human affairs aright can ignore religion. The inordinate disparity between rich and poor, a source of acute suffering, keeps the world in a state of instability. The solution calls for the combined application of spiritual, moral, and practical approaches. A fresh look at the problem is required, entailing consultation with experts from a wide spectrum of disciplines, devoid of economic and ideological polemics, and involving the people directly affected in the decisions that must urgently be made. It is an issue that is bound up not only with the necessity of eliminating extremes of wealth and poverty, but also with those spiritual varieties, the understanding of which can produce a new universal attitude. Fostering such an attitude is itself a major part of the solution. Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, says, religion is the greatest of all means for the establishment of order in the world and for the peaceful contentment of all that dwell therein. Should the lamp of religion be obscured, chaos and confusion will ensue, and the lights of fairness, of justice, of tranquility and peace cease to shine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Mogbelpur. Thank you so much for kindly reading the holy text. Now I will request the friends, please switch on your videos. We will take a group photograph. Deep, when it is done, you please let me know. Thank you very much. Before we proceed ahead, to make the ambient little lighter, we will have a song before we proceed ahead. Madam Pina is with us. She is going to sing a song for us. I had requested her to devote the song to love and unity in the mankind. I do not know what she has in mind. So let's hear her.
Abandon not the everlasting beauty for a beauty that must die. Accept not your affection on this mortal world, on this mortal world. beauty for a beauty that must die.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is from the hidden words of Baha'u'llah. We shouldn't shun the everlasting beauty for the temporary beauty that we see around us. Very beautiful. Thank you so much, Madam Tina. So friends, we are going to open the floor now for the general observations and questions. And if you have any comments to make, so I request the friends, since our intention is not to make it a lecturing session, we want to hear from the friends how we can contribute ourselves into the society hereafter, and what we can do as individuals. You can all share your views regarding the subject. So if you show your hands, we will unmute you. And if you want to ask a question, we will also ask our keynote speaker to answer. So before we make it, before we open the floor, I will request Dr. Merchant, if you have any views to share, I will unmute you now.
Yes. Yeah, friends, I really, actually, I always enjoy this virtual discourse because the subjects are very carefully chosen and the efforts we make really engage us. And I truly appreciate, once again, listening to my good friend, Mr. Badi Shams.
Nice to see
I'm
you.
familiar, yes, I'm familiar with the subject, but I also work a lot these days with the climate change and global warming crises, and also our community has also done a lot of relief work with respect to those afflicted by the global health pandemic in terms of the requirements for basic, survival provisions or medical help or medicines, consultation with the doctors without being charged. So there were lots of people who did this kind of humanitarian service, and it is being continued. I wanted you to comment, see, the maximum amount of resources everywhere in the world is in the hands of the state, the governments. Would you like to comment something about the policy framework? We know that the United Nations also brings out some of the best documents, and they also appeal to the various governments who are the member countries, which is the largest, UN is the largest civil service organization. But what kind of policy changes, policy framework? One thing is clear, as you mentioned, that the big powers, they are the dominant players. And within those developed countries, there are these huge transnational and multinational corporations who sometimes are even bigger than the state itself. So the military industrial complex, every year something like $2 trillion go, which is the world's military expenditure. While they praise the technological spin-offs and new innovations, yet the larger portion goes for unproductive and destructive purposes. So maybe I would like to hear from you your research about how the state as a major actor in bringing about policy changes. Of course, our government is doing a lot. In India now we have something like 35 to 40 new poverty alleviation programs, because 70% of our population, as Mr. Dr. Mishra mentioned, they would not be able to earn more than 400 rupees a day. Most of them less than that, because today the minimum wages is about 15,000 rupees a month, approximately. So a few comments in this aspect would also be enlightening from you, given your long experience and research work.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm absolutely ignorant about those matters. And I told you that I'm not an expert, and also my mind, my brain power is not good. I have to simplify things so that I can digest it. The way I look at it is this. I try to see the big picture, because otherwise, they say I get lost in the jungle because of the trees. This is the way I see it. The world is going through the change, and there are lots of trial and errors, and there are lots of lower nature activities, whether in the government, international, whatever. I call them sometimes acting babies. They act really like babies. Political parties, they talk that way. Now, to say that what can we suggest to a bunch of babies, I'm totally speechless, because they, to me, again, I prove my ignorance. Most of the politicians are short-sighted. I see them. We have election in Canada, and most of governments are short-sighted because they're just worried about being in power for the next election. And those policies, and then you go to United Nations, you have this amazing veto power, which I never understand. You have all good intentions and you come with a suggestion and somebody says vetoed, and then there you go. Now, humanity with its immaturity is doing a fine job destroying all the systems, and God bless their soul. I always say that some of these people, politicians, whether, I don't want to mention name, President of America or somewhere, they should be given some Baha'i recognition, because I go too far to say maybe they should be Continental Board of Council or something, which would be blasphemy, but please ignore that part. Because if we are talking about the forces of destruction and the construction, we cannot do the destruction. We are forbidden. But God bless their soul. With all their immaturities and stupidity, they are doing a fine job. So what can I suggest to a government who doesn't most of the time knows what they are doing? Even there are some good-hearted people, ministers or somebody there, sooner or later, they will be discouraged and swallowed by the power of the whole thing. Again, I go back because I'm simple-minded. I say, if we want to change the system, change the foundation, change the people's heart and soul. If you want to change anything, educate them. If you want to do anything, because I don't think, and I think this is my observation, House of Justice saying, emphasize on trying to practice what we believe in, because that's the foundation. So as I said, in the board of politics, I stay away from it. I know what's going on, but I'm not going to get lost with all the details, because they don't know what they're doing and they are not ready to listen to any suggestion. There are lots of smart people that they can suggest. Who listens? They're all worried about their position. I have a friend, a close friend of mine, who's an MLA, and don't want to mention where. And I was talking, I said, Barry, it's amazing. I was in the ministry, whatever, in the new federal government, and it was so intoxicating. Now, as Emily says, I really like to be a minister. All he's doing by flattering, chamchabazi, whatever, so that he becomes a minister. What do I have to say to him? Nothing. All I told him, I said, listen, I think the politicians, the whole job is a noble and absolutely noble job. If people realize how noble it is, sadly, they don't. If you knew how much power you have to change, and God bless his soul, few times I suggested him, I have a school with him. We started school, so we still have the joint venture in whatever. And he still does the Baha'i prayers in the school. So I'm very happy with him. So every time he does, like opens a hospital and anything, I just send him and say, good for you, shabash. Because that's the only way we can encourage the good thing and be there. They're confident, so they listen to you. But if you want to change it, they don't. They don't get you. And to be honest, for me, wastage of my energy, I'll go and talk to my neighbor and make him some salad. Maybe that would be more useful than spending my time with a politician that doesn't even care if I'm alive or not. I'm sorry, as I said, I'm very ignorant about these things.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shams. Mrs. Mogwelpur.
Yeah, first of all, I'm so happy to meet you, Mr. Badi Shams, and I read your books, and of course, I've read your book of Economic of Future, and I've shared it with many of my friends. And I am an educationist and working in field of education for past 37 years. And we have a school. Yeah, we also have a school. And I really agree with you 100% that this is the matter of spiritual sensitivity. Like it's really, I think it all starts from the foundation. So it's really very vital if we let our children know, the children, I don't mean only my children, I talk about the children of the humanity, that they all should know this concept. And if once they are spiritually sensitive to this issue, it will really do a great deal. And of course, the change of attitude in the people are very important. If we really only think that people can change their attitude towards the extremes, which they are really running behind, is going to help a lot. So as the writing of the Universal House of Justice, that the last line says that fostering such an attitude in itself is a major part of the solution. And that's really true. And I think nowadays with these big packages which are giving to the youngsters, the youngsters, they just complete their MBA and they just get into a job and they are given such huge packages that they really go out of tune. So they start, they don't know how to do, what to do, how to spend that money. And if that foundation is already with them and they have been raised that way, what we are really trying to do with our children in our school, I think this will somehow help to the problems of the society. And with regards to the situation in India, of course, the Constitution of India has a very nice point of right to life with dignity. So it's very important that we let the people live in with dignity, like even the poor. So if we keep on reminding this to ourselves, wherever you are, you may be in India, you may be anywhere in Western hemisphere, but I think this is very important that we don't ignore the dignity of humanity. And of course, Baha'u'llah's writing where he says that the best of men are those who earn their livelihood and spend it for their own selves and the kindred. And it's really, I think we are moving in the right track if we really want to help society. And thank you so much. And your practical points were really very practical. And of course, I have a habit of writing down and I noted all these and all the 64 or 62 of them. I will surely catch up with you and come up with them. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Mishra, for arranging this beautiful discourse.
Thank you
very much.
Yeah, I don't know if you know that I retired from education system in Canada. I was a counselor. So I know firsthand about education. And my methods are very funny. I had my office with the microwave and food and condoms and sweets and everything. And some of the members were not very happy because they thought you're encouraging deviant thing. I said, no, I'm keeping them safe. And most of them, they didn't have enough breakfast or something. I always had something in my fridge, tea with a toaster and everything. In the beginning, they didn't understand me. The point I'm making is this, and this is my observation and philosophy of my life. The cliche that love is everything, love solves most of the problems. And we can show that love by creating relationships. I mentioned it many times, people wouldn't understand, but in the end, the principal made it a point to make it a motto for our high school that the relation is try to have relationship with people. I think this is a big way of we can change, whether they are politician or not. Lovingly be there for them, their friends, befriend them, love them. This is the example Abdul-Baha set for us. This is not something I'm saying. I mean, Abdul-Baha lived it every time. Doesn't matter where he was. He was essence of love. He was love to anyone coming his way. He was generous. He would give his pants, for God's sake. I mean, in England, he gave his pants to the poor. I mean, he had only 2 of them, so he gave one of them away. So what I'm trying to say, sometimes we make things very complicated. And we make it so complicated that we don't know what we are doing. Stick to the basic. Love. and service. I mean, whether education, political, wherever you are, do it in service. So I don't know. But anyway, the education is definitely very noble. But I think politicians are still more important.
We are making politicians as well. In the field of education, we are also making politicians. So if
Yeah.
the foundation is given properly, hopefully we'll have a better trimmed and, kind of sized, as we say in India, better sized people, like we trim them properly and they'll be good politicians, hopefully.
Yeah, well, by the way, I made another material called Practical Suggestion for Community Service. Again, very basic suggestion. Also, I'm working two projects. One of them is called, and because lots of Baha'is in Canada also saying, yeah, this is great, but we need some material for the youth. And I agree because I work with them. So my next, which I was a little disappointed, Dr. Mishra interrupted my work, was about economics 101 for everyone. Basically going from ABCD practically so that not only the youth, because there are lots of adults that have no clue. I mean, actually, sometimes adults are worse. And so that we have a grasp on what is economics,
Yes.
understanding it, and do practical little things. So hopefully we are financially secure, also spiritually not missing the boat. So I'm hoping that I will not be disrupted again, and I'll finish that as soon as possible.
Very nice. Yeah, wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all your comments, Mr. Badi. Dr. Merchant, you know that you are yourself aware of the government spending. You are self-aware that Baha'is are working with the government and we try our best to mobilize the public opinion through education. You know, that can only solve the problem. We can't talk to the politicians, impose on them. That's not possible. But the only way is to negotiate, impress upon them the ideas, and that's how to go about it. Okay, so the next program, friends, is what we call is statement of pledges, and we do that in all our programs. It's like small children. We repeat the pledges. We came, we attended this course, we participated in it, and what we learn, we have to repeat those lines. What we read, and I will request now one of the friends to read the plays, and this time, in order to reduce the noise, because usually during the reading of the plays this time, we have a lot of noise and chaos. So in order to avoid that, we have selected only a couple of friends to repeat, and all the other friends, you can repeat wherever you are. Since you are muted, you will not contribute to the noise. So that will save the us from hearing all the noise and chaos. So now I request Mr. Yash Tamiza, who is a dynamic youth working for the Global Peace Foundation, to read the statement of pledges. And I think, Dr. Merchant, you can unmute yourself. Mr. Smokewell, please unmute yourself. Mr. Ganesh Shinoy, if you are there, please unmute yourself. Mr. Daniel, please unmute yourself. And kindly repeat whenever Mr. Yash is going to read the lines. Kindly repeat, and all other friends will repeat wherever you are. So it will be a kind of symbolic gesture that we are going to, the hereafter, life is not going to be the same. We are going to bring some changes in our individual life and how we look at the society and do something about it. Thank you very much. Mr. Yash, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you everyone for the statement of pledges. We recognize that solution to economic issues
We recognize that solution to economic issues
lies in the transformation of hearts
lies in the transformation of hearts
that enables a person to act with love and fairness
that enables a person to act with love and fairness
within the family and the society.
within the family and the society.
We promise to focus on true purpose of human life,
We promise to focus on true purpose of human life,
be content with a modest lifestyle,
be content with a modest lifestyle,
and build such positive consciousness within everyone around us.
and
And
build
build
such
such
positive consciousness within everyone around us.
We recognize that all human beings are responsible
We
We
recognize that all human beings are responsible
and accountable to build our common future,
and accountable to build our common future,
and agree that self-interest and urge to compete
and agree that self-interest and urge to compete
must be controlled for the sake of collective interest.
must be controlled for the sake of collective interests.
We promise to nurture this understanding,
We promise to nurture this understanding,
promote collaboration to ensure the well-being of all.
promote collaboration to ensure the well-being of all.
We recognize that work is essential for generation of wealth,
We recognize that work is essential for generation of wealth,
not just for oneself, but for whole community,
not just for oneself, but for whole community,
and agree that wealth must serve humanity.
and agree that wealth must serve humanity.
We promise to encourage everyone to be productive
We promise to encourage everyone to be productive
and contribute positively towards a better society.
and contribute positively towards a better society.
We agree that the welfare of any segment of people
We agree that the welfare of any segment of people
connected with the welfare of everyone
is connected with the welfare of everyone,
and understand that society suffers when any group thinks
and understand that society suffers when any group thinks
in isolation from others.
of its well-being in isolation from others.
We promise that our thoughts and action
We promise that our thoughts and actions
will be selfless and for the benefits of everyone around us.
will be selfless and for the benefit of everyone around us.
We recognize that any choice that an individual makes
We recognize that any choice that an individual makes
leaves a mark and one's decisions must be ethical,
leaves a mark and one's decisions must be ethical,
and the purity one's aims must be matched with the purity of actions to fulfill those aims.
and the purity of one's aims must be matched with the purity of actions to fulfill those aims.
We promise to be honest and fair in our dealings,
Promise to be fair, honest and fair in our dealings.
reject the self-serving ideas and work towards building
Reject the self-serving ideas and work towards building
a shared ethic and unifying vision
a shared ethic and unifying vision
to advance towards an enduring society.
to advance towards an enduring society.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you indeed.
Thank you so much, dear Ash, for reading it. Friends, we'll be happy to share the statement of pledges with you. If you leave your email and contacts in the chat box, we can share with you. Dear friends, we are also planning to initiate conversations and study groups with small groups of people, and we are also able to initiate conversations at the workplaces, other forums and platforms. Please do let us know in case you would like our support with the organizations or with the platforms that you may be associated. In the chat box, I have left the contacts. You can contact us, and we will do the needful. So, friends, Yash, here you want to share something? Okay. So, friends, this is the time that we conclude. We want to take the conclusions of the discourse that we just participated. What we can conclude from the discourse, what we have learned, that the fundamental purpose of all these economic solutions that we have talked about are basically spiritual in nature. They are associated with the world of the spirit, and the heart. As we study in the holy books, that heart must be cemented together, and the rich people will assist the poor out of their voluntary interest, and the poor should not depend on the rich. They should also work hard to generate their own resources. We must understand that the contemporary view of economics, the self-interest drives to prosperity, has no basis in the spiritual world. We have to go beyond the self-interest. It has to be restrained for the welfare of the community. We have to reject competition and embrace collaboration for the spirit of excellence to cultivate in the community. We have to understand that welfare of one segment of the people is impossible to attain when we think in isolation from others. The recent pandemic has actually taught us this lesson. Let us not forget that what history has taught us. We have suffered in the history, but it doesn't mean that the same things will be repeated for the future. It doesn't have to define our future. We have to work together as collective. It is our collective responsibility to work together for our common future, and there is no justification with carrying with the same lessons from the history and the institutions, the norms, the behavior which is not helpful, and they're not helping to serve the society, then it not be continued. And we have to liberate ourselves from the prejudices, from understand that we are children of one creator and members of one family. I would like to paraphrase the words of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith. He said that no power can exist except through unity. No man can attain his true station except through justice, and no welfare and well-being is possible except through consultation. So if we see the world of nature, we see reciprocity, we see that mutual help, and how they live together. The same has to be cultivated in the human world. And we learn from the Baha'i statement that we just read by Mrs. Mogul was just reading, that world order can only be established on the consciousness of the oneness of humankind. And unless and until there is universal participation, equal access to knowledge, technology, and resources, it's not possible by force to bring about change in the society. It is only possible through the spiritual standards, by empathic attitude, that we can create universal participation and equal access for all. In a nutshell, what we understand that the solutions to the economic issues requires an intervention which is far beyond the economic theories, because the current light of humanity is too sad, and it has testified that economic theories are not working. One's economic decisions, as Mr. Shams was talking about, has to be guided by the spiritual principles, because each of the decisions that we do as individual, it leaves a mark and it reflects on others and the community. Therefore, economic life has to be an expression of the human virtues, of the good things that we learn from the holy books, from different religions, and these things have to give us the solution to annihilate the extremes of wealth and poverty, and the solution has to come therefrom. We must realize, that our life, learning, and education is a very little value if it is not used for the society. If the wealth that we have earned is not used for the society, if the knowledge that you have gained is not used for the service to the society, we must justify that we are human beings. We are different from the animals. We are different from other forms of life. So we are distinguished by a different endowment which is given to us by God, by the power of intellect, by the power of free will, that we are different from all the forms of life, and we have to justify that we are the highest creation of God. So we should work hard as individuals to build bridges, to initiate conversations with all that cross our paths, based on the ideas that we have learned from here, and contribute to our family, our extended neighborhood, and to the wider society. With this note, I would like to thank all of you for joining us in this discourse, and we promise to come back in a few weeks' time again on another profound theme with another profound speaker, and who will guide us, who will help us understand the issue better, how we can contribute to the process, how we can contribute to the unifying process in society. I thank from the core of my heart Mr. Badi Shams, who had joined us at the very this odd hour, and he has been kind enough to accept. He hasn't slept the whole night probably, so he will, he will be taking rest now. So in any case, thank you very much, Mr. Sams. I thank Dr. Merchant, Mrs. Mogwilpur, Mr. Shinoy, Mr. Yash, and all other friends. If I have not been able to take the names, please forgive me. Please take care of yourself, your surroundings, your fellow human beings. Stay content. You keep smiling in the face of all the odds that you face, and that will bring about change in the society. Well, please leave your contacts. If you like the program, we are going to help you. We are going to invite you for the future programs. May you all have a wonderful week ahead, and we look forward to having your support and participation in the future programs. Thank you very much. Namaskar.